to bring attention to all the rotten things done in its name. There's a lot of lying, a lot of dying.
In 1989, when the whole thing came to a head the first time, we weren't officially at war anywhere. Were there any covert political activities the U.S. was involved in that you were specifically addressing?
Well, I mean, basically, the artwork was coming from a standpoint of, I mean, there are millions of people all over the world and within the borders of this country that have every reason to hate the flag and what it stands for and what the U.S. represents. And calling people to actually bring that experience out in the context of the work. As I said, it was interactive, and people could walk on the flag as they wrote the response to the question, what's the proper way to display a U.S. flag? And lots of people did that. And you know, so it's not just sort of like what I think or what I was protesting, but what lots of people had to say about the flag. You know, one of their responses was like, you know, from this black woman who said that her brother was murdered by police, and she said, quote, you know, that pig kicked over his body just to make sure that, quote unquote, nigger was dead. You know, that policeman wore the flag on his arm. Thank you for the opportunity to stand on this now, Dred Scott. And there were people that wrote a lot of things like that. But I want to get back to the point, is like you said, you know, when did flag desecration, you know, become sort of illegal, or when did it start happening? I think that, you know, one of the things I said when, you know, back in '89 when people asked me about this is like, you know, I said in Nazi Germany it was a crime to desecrate the swastika, and the real crime was that more people didn't. And they actually had to pass laws in Germany to say, look, this is, you know, our national emblem, we're enshrining it, you know, and knowing full well that there were a lot of people who had like every reason to want to like go up against them, and part of clamping down on political you know, repercussions and stuff, and political expression and outrage was to sanctify the swastika. And I think that's the same thing that the U.S. has done, you know, and was doing, because at that time, you know, the Soviet Union still existed. They were still sort of preparing for World War III with them. You know, they were, you know, dead set on, you know, revving up people to go in and bludgeon whoever and wherever they needed to. And, you know, just 2 years later, they invaded Iraq. You know, and so they were trying to whip up this sort of like patriotic war fever. And even, you know, they knew. I mean, Reagan on the way out talked about how, you know, the family, you know, people used to learn patriotism in schools, the family, and, you know, in church and stuff, and that the powers don't have like a cohesion and adherent, you know, people like just mindlessly worshiping, you know, whatever the U.S. says, country right or wrong, you know, and they needed to bring that back. And like Bush was actually, you know, part of all that sick shit that was going down then. And you know, frankly, it's like trying to update a little bit more. It's like after what happened, you know, with my piece, they were rushing to try and get a constitutional amendment to the Constitution. They knew that even like a flag law would be, you know, flag protection law would be illegal. So they wanted to get a, you know, amendment to the Constitution.
Who's they? Who is involved?
Well, the powers overall, but what I was going to say was one of the main players was Newt Gingrich. You know, the Führer right now, and it's like, I think that should tell people something, particularly as we also find that 45 states have now requested that Congress pass an amendment to the Constitution protecting the flag. And so it's like,
has this not been tried before? Wasn't this tried in 90?
Well, it's tried in 89 and 90, and they backed off it, figuring that they didn't have enough support. Because as I said, people were, you know, starting to really move against them. And I mean, some people saying, well, look, you know, we're out here starving, and you guys are worrying about trying to, you know, pass flag laws when we don't have anything to eat. Other people more consciously saying, why is it that you're trying to clamp down on political expression? You know, here are people who are just trying to talk and criticize you, the freest country in the fucking land, and you're trying to prevent them from doing that. And so there was like all sorts of people, and then there were, you know, revolutionaries and people on the bottom who were like, fuck the flag, fuck what it represents, and we want to be free of this. And so there's all that was springing forward, and so they backed off the amendment, because that would have actually been much more polarizing and exposing. But now it's back, as you know, it's like now that they're trying to put 100,000 new cops on the street, cut people to the bone on welfare, you know, lock up all immigrants, shoot them down, throw them out. They're trying to actually bring back, you know, all this rabid patriotism and stuff. And part of doing that is, you know, this whole, you know, new call for a flag amendment.
Well, Michael, what has changed? How has the zeitgeist changed so that this new era is back?
Well, actually, very little has changed, as Dred pointed out. We have a renewed sense of nativism, in which we, as a nation, seem to only want white, blue-eyed people.
What was that?
The pale penis people.
Yeah, those guys too. And but his point is well taken that this is a sense of renewed nativism, nationalism, and
But doesn't that usually happen during times of threat?
well, one can make the argument that the threat is being manufactured by government, and they're trying to scare middle-class white people out in the suburbs, and they exploit that for their own political means. In fact, this brings up an important observation, which involves social control. And in my work, I emphasize two forms of social control which are appropriate to understanding the flag-burning controversy. There's formal social control, which includes laws, statutes, and we see that with some attempt to regulate protest in general. Keep in mind that flag burning in and of itself is a form of social criticism and dissent. There's also informal social control, in which those who do attempt to burn the flag in public run the risk of being victimized or being assaulted by other citizens. And from time to time, we see cases where formal social control, in terms of laws and statutes sponsored by congressmen, intersect with informal social control. And in Louisiana and Pennsylvania, they have what they call a beat a flag burner bill, in which the existing penalties for assault and battery, which is 25 years in prison, $10,000 fine, are suspended and replaced by a penalty of $1. So,
If you beat up a flag burner?
yes, if you assault someone who's attempting to burn the flag, the penalty for assault and battery under those circumstances is $1. So it's very clear that form of victimization is strongly encouraged by official members of government, and it's what I call state-sponsored victimization for social control. And that's one of the perspectives that I introduce in some of my work in trying to understand flag burning in a much deeper, greater social context.